So YouTube has this unspoken rule where you have to start your video with something crazy and attention grabbing, so here goes. JRPGs suck, but I also kinda love them. But nah man, JRPGs, for one reason in particular, they've ruined the potential for anime video games. Allow me to explain. Back in 2013, I bought a little game called No Kuni for the PS3. I'm guessing most of you haven't played it, but I would also guess that some of you know it as that one game with Studio Ghibli or something. And you'd be right, it's that Studio Ghibli game. So if I told you that had nothing to do with my decision to purchase this game, my pants would be on fire. By all accounts, No Kuni is a perfectly fine game, but it wasn't a Studio Ghibli game. Their only involvement was animating the game's hand-drawn cutscenes, but I'm sure to many weebs' disappointment, the vast majority of those scenes are in the beginning of this 50-hour adventure, with a few sprinkled in the middle and end. Of the 18.5 minutes of animation, 12 of those minutes are seen in the first several hours. Studio Ghibli's involvement also brought with it legendary composer Joe Hisaishi, who co-composed the score. In reality, the game was made by Level 5, who did their darndest to ape the style of something like Ponyo or My Neighbor Totoro. And they did a good job. No Kuni looks and sounds great, but the game part of it is another story. Look, it's been, 7 years give or take since I played it, and I didn't beat it, but hear me out. The charm of Hayao Miyazaki doesn't work when you spread it out over 40 plus hours. Throw in a mostly mundane combat system and the magic of Nippon is gone. So what is that magic, and why does it feel uniquely Japanese? The phrase "mano no aware" is described as the quietly elated, bittersweet feeling of having been witness to the dazzling circus of life, knowing that none of it can last. It's an elegant form of melancholy, a very familiar feeling to those of us that watch anime. It's a reminder of life's impermanent beauty, often symbolized by the cherry blossom tree. For as breathtaking as these trees are, they actually only bloom for a week or two. Mano no aware and the cherry blossom are masterfully used in the classic film 5 centimeters per second, one of the most melancholy movies I've ever seen. The title is a reference to the speed at which cherry blossoms fall to the ground, serving as a metaphor for the fleeting beauty of life which passes us by before we can appreciate it. Video games also have these moments sprinkled in their stories, such as Roxas eating ice cream on the clock tower. Party members becoming friends and eventually parting ways is also used to great effect in games as it's relatable and elicits memories of simpler times. But as I said, these are small moments in relatively gigantic games, which is time better spent watching an anime if you're chasing that feeling of mano no aware. Once upon a time, 99% of video games existed in a handful of genres. Just like modern movies and music, however, games today are so difficult to place in a single genre that we're more likely to describe a game using other games. Metroidvania, Souls-like, roguelite, etc. If someone was crazy enough to make a Michael Jackson game today, it would probably play like Just Dance. But in 1988, we were graced with a platformer starring Mr. Jackson in which you moonwalked around rescuing kidnapped children. All of this to say, I don't think video games were sophisticated enough in 1988 to capture the tone and storytelling of My Neighbor Totoro, but I could totally see it done today. Anime, particularly anime movies, are typically carried by their vibe. Said vibe is lost in translation when developers try applying it to existing gameplay conventions like requiring combat, collectibles, or any sort of challenge. The idea that a game could simply be an interactive story or world didn't take hold until the early 2010s. The existence of really long JRPGs is fine, but I'm waiting for Japanese developers to discover a game that came out in 2012, and that's Journey. It convinced me that games didn't have to be so gamey anymore, that anime vibe could exude from a game without it being a long-ass JRPG like Ni no Kuni. We could easily play a game that gives us the same feeling as Spirited Away, without it being a platformer with combat and collectibles. Anime games could also be much longer than a movie as long as the pacing was done right. Truthfully, these thoughts came to me after playing Grease, a beautiful showcase of this concept. Elements of it reminded me of Studio Ghibli, which made me question why there weren't more games like this coming from Japan. Like Limbo and Inside, Grease isn't devoid of gameplay, but the platforming and puzzles are there to enhance the experience, not challenge the player. The enjoyment most games provide is through overcoming adversity, which is why it makes sense to say you beat Dark Souls, but not so much that you beat Grease. You played Grease, you immersed yourself in that world until the game came to a close. I want that for anime games. I want The Wind Rises in video game form, complete with its tear-jerking music, awe-inspiring visuals, and a healthy dose of Mono no Aware.